Delegation is a pain in the backside if you don't know how to do it well. And it's the reason you stay small. And this can be in business, and this can be in your family, this can be in your relationships. It is a very, very difficult but necessary thing to learn. It's a skill, and it's also a system that you can teach yourself and you can get better and better at. And the best people in the world are able to build companies with tens of thousands of people. So let's talk about the 5 delegation mistakes that keep small business owners broke. But before we get into that, hi, my name is Dean Soto. I am the president and founder of Prosulum.com. What is Prosulum? We are a virtual staffing company, actual human beings, not AI. And you might have heard of virtual assistants before. Very similar to virtual assistants, but we call them virtual systems architects. You give a task to an employee or a virtual assistant, and what happens? They will hopefully do the task right, or they'll have a ton of questions back, and it becomes a delegation nightmare. However, with the virtual systems architect, you give them that task, they document it into a step-by-step procedure, boom, 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 and from that point on, they'll do that task. No questions asked, back and forth, anything like that. You give them another task, they document it into a procedure that is visual, that even your grandma can do. So every time you give them a task, they're building out a standard operating procedure for you, a step-by-step checklist that everybody in your business can use, and they do the process as well. And it's funny, actually, one of the services that I use that I gave a virtual systems architect to years and years ago, still, so this had been 2017, that same virtual systems architect is still working with them. Pretty dang cool. That's how powerful these are. And, they are also half the cost of your typical employee in the United States. So often, depending on where you live, but here in California, it's about half the cost of a minimum wage employee. Okay, so all that being said, let's get into this. I love this topic. We've talked about it before, but the more you can learn this, the more powerful you're going to be. Most business owners don't know how to let go. And you might want to let go. You might want to get that thing off your plate, but often there are several reasons why you're not able to. And the statistic is, which you've probably heard, that 80% of small businesses fail within 5 years. And, that is because the owner generally is the main culprit. They're not able to let go. They're not able to scale. They're not able to create cash flow and everything like that because everything is dependent on them. And so the idea in delegating and letting go of your tasks is not to simply just find somebody and they're going to save your business. It doesn't work that way. When I had my Amazon business, I felt this way. I was doing customer service. I was doing refunds. I was getting new suppliers. I was listing product. I was handling all this stuff all the time. And I just figured if I can get somebody good and I can throw some videos at them so they understand what we're doing, that things will go well. Well, it never worked out. They would leave usually within 30 to 60 days because they were just overwhelmed. And, despite the fact that I'm sharing this training with them that I developed personally called Dream Dropshipping at the time, despite the fact that I'm training them on it, there was nothing there that they could grab onto and anchor onto when it came to actually doing the task. And I always had in the back of my mind when I was delegating that these people are going to save me. These people are going to take so much off of my plate. But in reality, they could not read my mind. They couldn't. I didn't have anything that they could grab onto to be successful in what they were doing. Okay, and I didn't even know what to delegate. Sometimes I would try and delegate strategic stuff, and it just never would work. So here's the thing. It's not about working harder. It's actually not even about working smarter. It's about working the system. Great book out there called Work the System and by Sam Carpenter. And that book, you don't have to be a genius. You just have to be able to explain to somebody what you're doing. And you need that person to document it, or you need to document it into a literal step by step. This is why McDonald's can hire literally anybody off the street, because they've created systems and documented processes that are so easy to follow that anybody, even a high school student, can do it. Same thing with the military. I remember when I was in the military that I would have to do things like PMCSing a vehicle. I think it's like primary maintenance, whatever, a Humvee. I had no experience whatsoever how to even do anything with any type of vehicle. But they had this big book that that supply would give you, and they would say, okay, turn to page 394 and just follow the checklist. You go to 394 and it would go through the checklist of the Humvee to how to check the oil, how to check the tire pressure, how to check this, how to check that. And literally you just went down the checklist, boom, 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 boom. And then you marked down anything that was wrong. And then you handed it back to supply and you were done with your PMCSing a vehicle. So all of the vehicles in our unit were always maintained by, and it was by people who had no mechanical skill whatsoever. I mean, some might, but I know I didn't. And so here's the thing, is that when you're delegating, more control equals less control. This is the delegation paradox. More control equals less control. Because most business owners work in their business and not on it. The more that you try to control things from the sense of be in it, you're going to lose control. You're actually putting the brakes on your business. Okay. Most problems stem from non-existent system management. That is key. If you have a problem in your business, it's either a broken system or broken process, or there is no system or process. So here are the 5 mistakes that kill delegation. Okay. So number 1 is the abdication trap. I was notorious for this. Dumping tasks without systems or context. I was notorious for this. And we'll go into it in a little bit. The documentation disaster. Obviously, if you're abdicating, you're probably going to have a bad documentation. You're not going to have anything documented, pretty much. Okay. So you're assuming people can read your mind. Number 3, wrong person problem. Okay. The wrong person problem. Number 4, micromanagement maze. And number 5, the accountability abyss. Okay. So mistake number 1, abdication. This is when you dump tasks instead of delegating systems. You have a list of tasks that you need to get done. You're so excited about your new virtual assistant or new virtual systems architect or new employee or whomever. Grandma's going to come and help you. And you just give them a big task of things to do. And you expect that they're going to know exactly how to do it. Or if they have questions, they can come to you. But the problem is when they have questions, then they have a lot of questions. And then what does that make you feel? Crap, I hired the wrong person. even though they are completely in the right to ask these questions, you start to feel that they're dumb, they're stupid. In a previous video, I talked about a guy who he's somebody that I take my car to, and he would run through receptionist after receptionist. They would come on, and then three months later they would leave. Come on board. 3 months later they would leave, and it was this way for like 3 years. And every single time he'd be like, "Yeah, they're dumb." They would just ask nonstop questions. I can't find anyone good. Well, it's because he would dump a ton of tasks on them, and they would rightfully ask questions about the task, but then he would interpret that they're dumb. He didn't need to ask any of these questions when he was figuring this stuff out, right? But they must be dumb because they're asking all these questions. So Michael Gerber from the book E-Myth Revisited calls this abdication, not delegation. Okay. I was notorious for this. I had this one, my very first virtual assistant back in the day. Her name was Tazine. And I was still at my full-time job, and I had a side job going, and I just gave her a bunch of tasks to do for my side business without context, and she tried her best. She gave me all these spreadsheets, it gave me all these things. I gave her tasks that really weren't even it's not even stuff that I really even needed. And she would ask all these questions back and forth, and I basically hired her into a failing. There was nothing that she could do but fail. And so eventually I had to let her go because I was just spending too much money. And I remember this is the first time I had to actually let somebody go too. She was not happy. I was not happy. It was a very tough situation. So this is where you instead of having a system, you're just basically throwing stuff at them. You drop responsibility instead of transferring it systematically. And the result is chaos, blame, and eventually taking all the tasks back. You just go right back to the same thing, and it just repeats. Okay. And so the key is to have a system that you transfer systematically, documentation, step by step. Okay. Systems first, people second. Okay. Once you understand what the heck you're doing, there's a really good, forgot who it was. I think it might have been Peter Drucker, but there's a quote that I love that goes, if there is no process, then you don't know what you're doing. If you can't explain it in a process, then you don't know what you're doing. Okay. Document what you're doing. Even if it's one little task, document it, and then you could put a person on it. Create a step-by-step process that anyone can follow. Test the system yourself. And you can include decision points, exceptions, expected outcomes, etc. But never delegate what you haven't documented. Later on, when you have people who have been with you for years, you can then say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Come up with your own process for it. Document it. Let's see if it works. You can do that later on. I mean, years down the road with somebody who understands your business, but never in the beginning. So number 2, assuming people can read your mind. Just figure it out. That is, I would say 90% of people who fail with a virtual systems architect have this concept. They have mistake number 1 and mistake number 2. Just figure it out. Like, what am I paying you for? Like, come on, you use your brain, right? Vague instructions equal guaranteed failure. This is why the biggest companies don't give vague instructions. They have documented procedures, documented processes from the very top all the way down. If you're expecting others to fill in the gaps, that creates frustration on both sides, okay? And this nice little quote from me, business owners suck at delegating and creating systems. They do. I was one of them. I would do the just figure it out. You're smart. I'm paying, and maybe I was paying extra to the person because they're supposed to be this expert, but even an expert is going to, you can't just have them figure it out. Okay. This is why even the top senior executives have to follow specific policy, have to follow specific procedures in the top ranked businesses. You never just let anybody do what they want. And you never just, at no point can you just have people figure it out. So you have to document every step. You have to use it almost like you're creating a franchise. And they have to be so clear that literally your grandma could do it. Like anyone can execute on them. And the easiest way to test this, which I do this with my documentation anyways, I give it to my staff, and if they could do it the first time, that's a good system. If there's a spot, the thing is though, if something goes wrong, I know exactly in the system where it went wrong, and I can fix that part. Right task, wrong person. So Gino Wickman, founder of EOS, says, right person, right seat. Okay. You can have the right person, right seat. You can have the right person, wrong seat. You can have the wrong seat, right person. Okay. Meaning that essentially, do you have a process and do you have the right person for it? Is the process, and so in EOS, it's get it, want it, and have the capacity to do it. In Marcus Lemonis's term, people, process, and product. Okay. You always want to be you want to have a written task, like a documented task. Problem is, most people don't even have the task. So it's like non-existent task, wrong person. Non-existent task, right person. Okay. Now, if you do have everything written down, you do have a process, it's easy to follow, and it's proven to work. Sometimes you actually might have the wrong person for it. And I've had this several times. I've had people in my core team where the task is very, very simple. It's laid out, documented, but their personality didn't match what the expected outcome was going to produce. And so you want to make sure that the task, that the people that you have doing things are the right person. So they get it. They want to do it because they might get it. So for me, when it comes to like mundane administrative tasks, I am not the person for that. I cannot, my brain will literally not work. It might work the very first day, but something in my brain will not allow me. It will not allow me. I cannot do the same thing over and over again every day. Some people love that. So I get it. I get why we're doing it. I don't want it. And I have the capacity to do it because I'm smart enough to do the thing, but I don't want it. And that disqualifies me from that task in EOS. And I think in general, like with business, if you're doing things the right way, if you're trying to delegate. So you want somebody who gets it, who wants it, and has the capacity to do it. I have people on my core team that they love that type of stuff. They love getting into the detail of stuff. They love doing things over and over again. I can't do it. It's just not me. I'm not built that way. I wish I was built that way. I wish I could do everything, but I can't. So that's what we want to achieve, is the get it, the want it, the capacity to do it when it comes to this. You need to hire based off of the systems that you have. Okay. The get it, want it framework or get it, want it, a capacity framework works really, really well. And this is one thing I liked about EOS is that you don't have org charts. You have what's called like accountability charts. You have seats like where each seat actually has like measurable, accountable results. Okay. And so like HR is not just the HR organization. You have to be able to meet these results. Okay. So right person, right system, delegation success. Okay. Number 4, delegating tasks but not authority. So this is where a lot of people, a lot of business owners will get sucked back into things. At some point, you're going to have to give your guys the ability to make a decision on your behalf. So my core team can make decisions with clients, several different types of decisions with clients. But if you go 90% of the way and you say, okay, well, if a client asks anything about discounts or they have a problem, and let's say they have an issue with something, or they have a, trying to think of, if they have questions that could potentially be, that would require, say, a partial refund or a credit, or maybe it's sending a gift in a mail, or maybe it's something where there might be a financial thing, like a small amount. What you don't want is where they go 90% of the way and then they have to ask you a question about it, especially when it's something small. Like if it's something like, hey, so and so referred us to this person over here. Can I send them a $25 Starbucks gift card or whatever? Rather than having to make those decisions, just say, hey, if somebody referred, then you're welcome to give them a $25 gift card. Just make sure I'm on copy with the email that you send out or whatever. Something like that, okay? Where you set a framework, you can set a boundary of sensitivity, and you just can watch the machine do its thing rather than halting the machine so that you can say, yes, please send that $25 gift card as a thank you. You can do things where you're giving something, where you're allowing them some authority over and above what a typical employee would. Basically, you're not tying their hands at the last moment, okay, and getting sucked back into everything. Because then the temptation is to start micromanaging things like that. Now, you don't want to give them the ability to send, hundreds or thousands of dollars to other people, because then you're opening yourself up to a security concern. But you also want to be able to give them freedom, right? So boundaries, right? This is where you can set boundaries, create escalation protocols for exceptions. You can trust that the system is going to work. That you say that like I said with the referral, if it's a customer who spent X amount with us and they referred somebody, you can spend X amount to give them a thank you card or a thank you gift or something like that. Okay. And you can create things like a decision matrix. Okay. Then number 5, no measurement. Okay. What gets measured gets managed. This is where EOS comes very, very much in handy. Okay. Vague expectations create vague results. Your documented systems should already have clear expectations of what the result should be. Okay. Without clear metrics, you can't tell if delegating is working. Even if it's something like we usually get one sales call a week. I'm going to delegate this thing. The expectation is I still get one sales call a week or more. Something simple. It doesn't have to be something crazy. Okay. But you need to be able to see if something's working or not. Okay. So clear metrics, even something extremely simple. You can do regular check-ins like staff meetings every week. And then you can create little feedback loops that improve your systems. And then you need to focus on the outcome and not how much people are working. That's one of the things is, personally, I don't care how much my team is working in the sense of hours spent. Okay. Where am I? Right there. I don't care how much necessarily my team is working from an hours perspective. I'm caring more about the results. Okay. Would I want somebody who put in 10 hours a week? I'm not saying that I don't want them to work more than this, because more than 10 hours, but I'm just saying, do I want somebody who works 40 hours a week and makes me no money, or somebody who makes me thousands of dollars a month and works 10 hours a week, but it's super smart, super clear, effective work that they're doing with their skill set? Obviously, I would rather have the latter. But some business owners get so fixated on how much time somebody's putting into something, and they don't put an importance on the measured results. So that's what you want to focus on when it comes to delegating, is the measured results. Okay. What gets measured gets improved. What gets rewarded gets repeated. Okay. So all of this, when you fix these issues, you will have some freaking awesome results. Okay. Let me move myself over here. Delegating is awesome when you're doing it the right way. When you fix each one of those 5 issues, you're going to have a delegation machine. Okay. You'll stop being a bottleneck and you'll start being the CEO of your business. This is why, for us, systems plus outsourcing equals freedom. Okay. You can stay busy or you can get profitable. It's your choice. Okay. So if this sounds something that you'd like to potentially start doing with your business, if you want to get a virtual systems architect who is, this is their skill set, you give them a 5-minute video and they will document everything step by step into a checklist, and they'll do the thing. And eventually you have everything in your business documented, and your business will be automated and humming and running and all that other stuff. If that sounds like something that is good for you while you're sipping Mai Tais on the beach, you're with your family, you're watching money roll in, and you aren't working 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. You're working 10 hours a week, but it's on high level creative stuff. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, go to prosulum.com, prosulum.com/schedule, and hop on a call with us. We'd love to talk to you and see if it'd be a good fit. And with that being said, my friends, start delegating, fix those 5 delegation mistakes, and you will have a delegation machine. Go check out prosulum.com/schedule. We also have a webinar, by the way, at prosulum.com/webinar you can attend, and it goes through the entire, in detail, how to develop systems like this, and go check that out. But for the time being, my name is Dean Soto, and I will see you in the next video.